Hello there. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are. I'm Ryan in Singapore. Welcome to our mindfulness practice. Today's topic is about when mindfulness turns into hypervigilance. So this topic came up for me because I noticed in my own practice as things were going on, or as I continued meditating and practicing mindfulness, I found that mindfulness just happens for me automatically more and more. The more I practice, the more I find that it's really easy to notice what's going on. Moment to moment, that there's this kind of seamless awareness that's developing, and it starts to become my new autopilot mode. And so, just a little recap, that mindfulness is kind of the opposite of autopilot. So autopilot is just kind of, not being aware, letting things go as they go, letting your mind's built-in subroutines just go ahead without your intervention. That's you are not your mind. That's one thing I think it's hard for us sometimes to wrap our heads around. But like I'm not my body. I'm really not my mind either. My mind has a mind of its own. There's and then that's a huge topic. What am I exactly? Which we're not going to get into today. But as things, as my mindfulness practice has developed, I just noticed that awareness comes up and it starts to become easier. It starts to become my new autopilot to some degree. And I think that's important to notice, because as it becomes my new autopilot, I become less aware of the awareness of awareness, right? Let's see how to put that, is that instead of simply raw awareness coming up, now there's some charge, there's some extra layer that's being added in to my awareness and to my mindfulness. And that's this kind of like, I wish things weren't this way. And this is, I want to clarify, this is subconscious, right? This really isn't even part of, it's not part of what I know is happening. I just see it, only by continuing to develop my mindfulness can I see this layer underneath. And so what's happening is that this mindfulness begins to turn into hypervigilance when I am not aware that it's happening. So through my practice, I become more aware of my body, my bodily sensations, my thoughts, and in my daily life. And so that's really where this is showing up, is in my daily life. So in my daily life, I find myself becoming more aware of what's going on in interactions. Interactions with others, interactions with myself. But what tends to also show up when I'm on autopilot, when I'm mindless about my mindfulness, is that there's judging that shows up. And there's striving that shows up. There's this judgment of things shouldn't be this way, or things shouldn't be this way, and I need to change the way they are right now, right? And to be clear, that's not really that isn't how this practice works. So I'm just going to write here in the chat: awareness is not a demand for change. Oops, and I misspelled change, but anyway, you've got it. Awareness is not a demand for change, and I think that's really important to notice. Is it? And maybe the question to ask yourself is awareness enough? Can we today let awareness be enough instead of having more to be required? So sometimes I've used this example of the second arrow. It's kind of a Buddhist way of explaining the Buddhist way of explaining what happens. The first arrow is the sensation, the emotion, what's really happening can cause us pain, can cause us to be uncomfortable. So seeing what it is that has happened truly. The second arrow is us harming ourselves, right? The first arrow is kind of harm from the outside, and we can learn to work with that. We can cause, pain and suffering are two different things. Just because we experience pain doesn't mean we have to experience suffering along with it. So that's the first arrow. The second arrow is the mind getting involved, saying, "Ow, this is painful. Ow, I wish this weren't happening. I don't want this experience to end." Right? These are the kind of mind patterns that show up to make this more challenging. And so what can tend to happen in the realm of hypervigilance is the mind saying, "This is wrong. I shouldn't feel this way. I need to fix it now. Why am I like this?" And so this can come in subconsciously. And so notice the commentary of the mind is quite often something that's subconscious and something that we don't have control over. As I said a few moments ago, the mind has a mind of its own. Like, we are not in control of what's going on in our mind. And if you don't believe that, just wait until the meditation portion of today's event. We will get into that. You will see that your mind doesn't behave exactly the way that you want it to. So the first layer is the sensation, the emotion, the experience. The second layer is the commentary that's around that. So, and what that commentary is like. And for today's event, let's just say that commentary is, why is it like this? I want things to be different from this. So the first layer is the experience. The second layer is the evaluation of the experience. And mindfulness deals with the first layer. And it will deal, that this is the way to deal with the second layer. But just to be clear, is that second layer coming in, that commentary is not part of mindfulness. Okay? So Deb asks, I tend towards hypervigilance in general. Will I address that? I'm really addressing it in this specific context, in that awareness transforming into hypervigilance. And so just how to deal with that. And I do believe that it deals with hypervigilance in general, because where does, and maybe you can help to look into that for yourself and write it in the chat. Where does your hypervigilance come from? So as your hypervigilance comes up, can you go back and find out what's the root of that? Where do the hypervigilant thoughts and actions first originate? Okay, and so fear. And so I'll see if I'm going to try to use fear as an example as to how we can use fear as that indicator, and to use mindfulness around fear. So okay, so just to let me just get back to where I was. So why does this happen as our practice becomes deeper? So as we're practicing more, our attention starts to get sharper, our ability to detect gets greater, and if you have learned in the past that, if your nervous system has learned in the past that detecting problems means correcting problems, then this awareness starts to become a scan for faults when we're in our autopilot mode. So you start to turn into a quality control agent for yourself. And instead of just scanning for what is true in this moment, also trying to immediately fix it. And this starts to become exhaustion. And in fact, this is really what drove me to talk about this topic today, because I just noticed how that happened for me. Was that, so much was going on, so much that I was observing, my mind was immediately labeling as wrong and needing to change in this moment, that that there's this exhaustion from constantly not measuring up to my own standards of excellence. So mindfulness turns into surveillance in that mode. And it's and what happens is that we don't notice the surveillance. The surveillance itself becomes another potential object for mindfulness. So this is the issue. So can we notice what our commentary is? So notice the first of all, that first layer of mindfulness. Notice what it is that's happening, and then when the judgment appears about whatever it is that's going on, can we notice the judgment itself? And that will start to help dissolve that difficult experience that we're having. So the core misunderstanding here is that mindfulness means I should be calm, right? This is the myth, and I'll write it like that. Mindfulness means I should be calm. And this just isn't the case, or whatever. Mindfulness means that I should, you can fill in the blank. Like this, I'm a mindful person. I'm a meditator. So because of that, how can I still be harming others? How can I still be unaware of what's happening in the moment and we reflect back and look at that interaction or that way that I'm dealing with myself, the use of the word should, or whatever it is. So, and see that and judge, this is wrong. Why am I still doing this? Does that commentary sound familiar to you? Why am I still doing this? Why am I still like this? I can't believe I haven't changed yet, right? Be aware of that voice that shows up. That awareness is extremely helpful. So Spencer says, for me, my trouble has been feeling very lonely while I'm also trying not to be hypervigilant around what others might do to hurt me. So my hypervigilance is probably my need for more control over my life. Thanks, Spencer, for sharing. And yeah, I can see it. And again, this is kind of that source of fear in that. If we're here in this hypervigilance as well. So, the common, some of those common things that you may hear, right? I'm mindful. I shouldn't be anxious, right? It is here. And I want to be clear, right? Like, is it possible to befriend the fear? And mindfulness, one of the things that it does is it helps to create space around these difficult emotions so that we can hold them more easily. The analogy is roll out the red carpet. Can I roll out the red carpet to welcome this emotion? Welcome anxiety, welcome fear. Fear is here. And in that space that's created by that welcoming, there's more. That hypervigilance might go away all by itself. There's more space to be with it when we're aware of it, when we can see it with that objective version of ourselves. I think I do this gesture to kind of like this is the experience. This is the me. This is the big me that's aware and that's watching, that can see things clearly. So, other phrases that might show up. If I'm practicing, I shouldn't be reactive. I'm aware. I should be beyond this. So, just understanding awareness does not prevent our humanity. Awareness is part of our humanity. This is part of our experience. Awareness changes our relationship to the experience. The measure of practice is not disengagement or disassociation with feelings. The measure is, are we adding any additional unnecessary resistance? Are we shooting that second arrow into ourselves? So the encouragement for the stress response in MBSR and mindfulness-based stress reduction is not to change it, is not to have any interaction with it, to try to change it. It is to be aware of it. And what pretty much all participants in MBSR notice is that awareness itself shifts the experience. So you don't have to judge the experience. You don't have to try to change it. The awareness alone is enough. So what's that look like? Not trying to change things. This is here, right? So these are some phrases you can use when you notice this kind of hypervigilance is going on, right? And that the mind starts to go off and starts planning. And so in fear and anxiety, this is here. I'm going to just write that. This is what it feels like right now. This can be here without my approval. So Spencer asks, is that welcoming similar to self-compassion? It is in that the welcoming is kind of like the first step. It's hard to do the self-compassion when we're not aware of what it is that we're doing. So it's really this is like the first step behind it, right? Self-compassion is something that we can practice anytime, but it's hard to practice self-compassion if you don't notice your own judgment towards yourself. Right, so that's it. Is that we see what it is that's happening, we see the fear, and then we see that I shouldn't be afraid. I shouldn't be like this. Because I've been practicing so much, this should already be gone. And so that's really that's the next step. And once we're aware, then we can use self-compassion if that's the strategy that we want to use. But what what today's lesson's about, and yes, self-compassion is certainly appropriate here, is just about that raw awareness, that awareness of the judgment when it happens. And so that alone, self-compassion is an additional step, but the mindfulness itself already begins the discharging process. So can we accept, and I'll just kind of put up 9 attitudes, right? Acceptance is key here. So the 9 attitudes of mindfulness can be helpful in dealing with this. So acceptance is the accurate contact with reality. It is not resignation. It is not giving up. It is simply stopping the argument inside about what is already happening, right? Acceptance doesn't say that it's good. Acceptance says that this is true. So you can take just this process, which we can potentially put self-compassion. If you're using an active self-compassion practice, just putting it right after these 3 steps. So the 3 steps are: notice and name the second layer. Right. So you've noticed the first thing. Now notice the second thing. Judging mind. The shouldn't story. Or the should story. The fixing impulse. Noticing these things. Right, that's it. It doesn't even have to be an inner commentary. It can just be that impulse to fix, that impulse to change. Just notice it. What does it feel like? Notice what the body does when we have that desire to change in the moment. And then, step 2, return to the raw data for 10 seconds. What are those sensations? pressure, warmth, vibration, contraction. No explanation, no meaning, no story. Just 10 seconds of the raw sensations. Step 3. Allow one breath of coexistence. Not a deep breath to calm down, just one breath for letting experience be there, to welcome fear as a friend. Fear exists to protect you. Fear isn't something that's bad. Fear is there as a friend, and you can befriend it. So the goal is not relief. The goal is honest contact without harassment. So can you feel it? Can you let it be here? Can you let it be felt? So when we stop forcing change, the system settles down on its own most of the time. When we stop telling a feeling that it shouldn't exist, it often moves on all by itself, and it does so more quickly. You notice the arising and passing of everything in life, including our experience, including our sensations. Any questions before we get into our meditation practice? Okay. So we'll go ahead and get into meditation. So step 1, can you be aware of your mind having a mind of its own? And you don't have to try to do that. That's not something that requires any effort. It's something that you will notice as you're meditating. You will be pulled away at some point by something. It can be one of the 5 senses, can be a mental, can be a thought, mental formation. So get comfortable. Would encourage you to bring your back away from the backrest if you're sitting in a chair or on the sofa. And sitting on the edge, sometimes sitting on the edge of the chair or the edge of the sofa can help to bring more awakeness, more alertness. Letting the hands rest gently on the knees or in the lap. So starting to check into the body, just seeing what the body is like right now. Often I'll start with the places where I'm feeling tension. So I notice my forehead, my eyebrows. The face has a bunch of small muscles in it that are there to allow us to make facial expressions and communicate. That's what it's for. It's for communication outwards, what emotion I'm feeling. Right now, there's no one to communicate to. So just see if you can be aware. No need to change. No need for anything to be different. And that tension in my forehead, my eyebrows, it's not disappearing. And that's okay. I also feel tension in my shoulders. And being aware of it doesn't make it dissolve instantly. It's here now, and that's okay. It doesn't need to go away instantly. I can also be aware of Earth's gravity pulling down. I can feel the pressure that my cushion puts on my buttocks, on my legs. And as I sit in stillness, one thing that always starts to crop up is my breath. Feeling my belly moving. Although the rest of my body is still. This rising and falling with the breath just continues to happen. So as best you can, holding awareness on the body. It is possible to be completely aware of our bodies all the time. It requires effort. It requires some determination. But how do you know where your right big toe is? How do you know where the palm of your left hand is? Is your spine straight? If it is, how do you know that? So just seeing what degree of awareness we have of our own bodies. That all of this is accessible to us and we can be aware of it all the time. And if you're having trouble tuning into something like the right big toe, one way to maintain present moment awareness is just to observe the breath. Observe the belly rising and falling with each breath. Right now, I'm here, I'm meditating. The past is gone, the future has not yet come. I am here. There is nothing to be afraid of. I'm sitting in a room all by myself. No one else is around. There's no stray toy that's going to fly and hit me in the face. I can really be fully engaged in this moment without fear. Without judgment. This breath is exactly how it is. And I just finished breathing that breath. It's done. And so for some of us, following the breath means that we want to get in control. It's not just an in-out, someone watching. It is this, maybe turning into hyperventilation. We're starting to get dizzy or something. You don't have to focus on the breath to be mindful. You can focus on the feeling of the cushion against your buttocks. The feeling of the rest of the body as a whole here, now. So let's take a few minutes here just to dwell in the present moment. And when the mind wanders, is there any commentary that goes along with that? I can't believe my mind wandered again. I should be a better meditator. Why is my mind still going off? Why am I thinking about this? I'm supposed to be meditating. Be aware of those thoughts. Awareness of those thoughts creates more spaciousness itself. Just come back to raw sensation. This is here. This too belongs. this too belongs. Congratulations, everyone, for making it through today's practice. I'm going to close our practice with 3 rings of the bell. Well done. Thank you for practicing with me. Thanks, Callie. Thanks, everybody, for being here. Thanks, Jill. How'd it go? What was it like? Did you notice the second arrow show up at all in your practice? So remember, your job is not to get rid of experience. Your job is to meet the experience without adding the second arrow. So when I notice, maybe you can set this intention for the day. When I notice this shouldn't be happening, I will label it and return to the raw sensation of one breath. Thanks, Maxine. Thanks, Jean. Thanks, J.E. Great to have you here today. Thanks, Natalie Gar. Thank you, Francis. I have a question that may sound dumb, says Rachel. Why is it important? And I just want to ask, what is it? Kelly says, peaceful, was more accepting of when my thoughts went off on a tangent. Great. And that's, again, something that can be applicable for more than just when your thoughts go off on a tangent. This is something that can be used for any time we notice the shouldn't mind. I shouldn't be feeling anxiety right now. I shouldn't be, these kind of things shouldn't be happening. Can we be aware when that hypervigilance comes? Can we be aware of those pieces that are coming up, right? Like that automatic planning that's happening without us allowing it, right? Without us saying it's okay, because our minds don't ask for our permission to think thoughts. And hopefully your meditation was a good way to see that as well. Why is it important observing the thoughts, says Rachel? It's because of the spaciousness that's created. Thanks, Cece, for your donation. So as we observe the thoughts, thanks, Gary. Thank you, Gary, for your donation. As we observe the thoughts, that helps to discharge the charge that the thoughts have. So, and just give it a try. Just give it a try. Notice that judgment and what happens as we start to notice our judgment. Notice the striving. Notice the desire for things to be different. Because often the way of change, the best way of change, isn't trying to force change, isn't trying. Maybe I can just end there. Isn't trying, full stop. There's no need to force most of the time. A lot of times we're lacking patience, and we want instant results. We want things to be different now. And through observation, that is the key. to change, and change isn't something that happens quickly. It's something that happens over time. If we force change, maybe we're going to be successful once or twice, but we'll see that the exhaustion that happens makes it unsustainable in the long run. Rosamond says, Zindel Seagull says, the moment at which you notice your mind wandering is when you should be gently pleased. Not beating yourself up because you've noticed it means that you're back. That's fantastic advice. Thanks for sharing. Well, I hope that helps, Rachel. If you have more questions, I am continuing this series on raw mindfulness. So today was kind of about how mindfulness can be the source of hypervigilance. So I just kind of want to roll backwards here. It's still January, and what I try to do at least once a year is really go down to the nitty gritty, the bare bones of mindfulness, what mindfulness is, and how to use it, not just in your meditation practice, but how to bring it into daily life. So that's really what. Let me just check the Thursday's topic so I can tell you exactly what exactly what it's called. The building blocks of mindfulness: body, breath, and raw awareness. So that's happening in 47 hours and 15 minutes. So hope to see you there. I think that's it's really going to help to kind of bring us back to the foundations of mindfulness. So how, not just how to do that, but as well as what that is, what it's like, and what kind of benefit we can expect from raw awareness. Thanks everybody for being here. Let's close our practice as we do with some well wishes to ourselves and well wishes to everybody else that's here. So follow along with me if you like. May I be happy and peaceful. May everyone watching, listening, wherever you are, I wish you all happiness and peace. And may all sentient life, near and far, like me and dissimilar to me, may we all be happy and peaceful. Have a good 47 hours. Hope you have a good one. Until next time. Bye-bye.